Hey guys, so I'm here to talk to you today about a book I actually read back in January and am just now getting around to reviewing. I'm looking to pick up the second one sometime very soon and thought I would first come back to this one and discuss it a bit. This is another one of those works that was originally self-published and then picked up for audio by Podium Publishing. This is Cephrael's Hand by Melissa McPhail. I did listen to this one on audio, narrated by one of my favorites, Nick Podell, but you can get it in both print and ebook as well. This is the first in a series called A Pattern of Shadow and Light, an epic fantasy with some stunning world building, a rather large cast of characters, cast of viewpoint characters and supporting characters, an interesting magic system that really stems from our understanding of what reality is in this world the authors created, and a jam-packed plot filled with intrigue, adventure, a series of events that lead us through the many landscapes and places in this world, and a questionable enemy that seems to be at the heart of everything. First of the many threads we follow is that of the half-charming, half-arrogant Prince Ian Valorian, last living son of the King of Danum. Right at the beginning, Ian's life is sort of derailed by an assassination attempt on his life that takes, instead, someone close to him whom he was unable to protect. He himself is taken on a journey with the mysterious man that seems to have saved him to find whoever's responsible for the assassination attempt and eventually to learn more about the abilities he has and hasn't yet truly tapped into. His life seems to have its strings pulled constantly by outside forces, which is actually comparable in many ways to another character we follow, Trell of the Tides, a man whose own journey is almost entirely out of his own control, as he's forgotten every bit of who he once was. There's more to who he is than anyone realizes, including himself. And we see his constant journeying through a few different places and casts of people that either he helps in some way or that help him in some way. He's honorable to a fault in all that he does, and despite not knowing where it comes from, sticks to what he feels is right at all times. The instinct he has to do so is one of the few things he's held on to. Then there's Alinari, a healer and a duchess reluctantly seen as a possible match for the aforementioned Prince Ian. She can at times be hot-headed, ill-tempered, or stubborn, but generally means well and does everything she can to be the healer she feels she's meant to be. She's independent and is, to put it mildly, unamused by Ian's antics and does all she can to make him know it whenever the chance arises. There are some other more minor characters that are all actually fantastic and some of my favorites. Tanis, a young truth reader, which is exactly what it sounds like, and I'll get more to it in a minute, who's both genuinely honest and curious, ready to do what he has to do, but at first wholly unprepared for what that means. He does his very best and learns quickly. And then there's also Finlar, cousin and great friend to Prince Ian, a sort of confidant and comic relief that truly offers balance to most scenes that he's in. He's got a flair for mischief and roguishness that hides the deep sense of loyalty and integrity, specifically towards his cousin that he has. And then in Trell's story, there's a whole myriad of characters that we meet that help Trell along the way and that the reader can become easily attached to. I mean, I could go on and on because each seems to actually contribute something to the overall story, but I'll leave them for you to befriend along the way as Trell does, because we've not even really touched on the Adept, a nearly extinct race with old roots in this world and in the magic of it, whose numbers have dwindled so heavily that something must be done to stop them from disappearing entirely. We follow Rain Delacourt, whose status as fourth Vestal, a Vestal being one of the Adept whom oversees those who show magical talent and act as a kind of enforcer of that magic's integrity, makes him the most likely candidate to be the race's savior. He must find and interpret the actions of another that is like him, the fifth Vestal, Bjorn van Gelderon, whom was seen as a traitor in the genocidal wars 3 centuries earlier that wiped out his race. and whom now seems to have his hand in many of the happenings of this world in this day and age. And he's almost an unseen enemy that puppet masters many things, which then causes Reine Delacourt to do some of the same to find him and use what he knows to help secure the future of adepts for good. There's a whole lot happening here, as I'm sure you can tell by that description, and much of that stems from the world building, which is easily the strongest suit of this. Melissa McPhail has created a truly special mythology and system of magic or energy that lies at the heart of it. The adepts' abilities and those magical talents that come through within certain people are all related to these like strands, these patterns that lie behind everything within all of creation. There are some specific, more simple abilities that come from this, such as healing and truth reading, but there's some other more complex capabilities possible through working with these strands and in forming patterns with them, as we discover along the way, especially within Ian's story. We get to learn a ton about what he can do and how. And we learn a ton also about some of the different kinds of cultures and customs and how they differ from others through Trell's story, which is all handled quite well. A lot of the world building in the magic system ties into the themes that it seems the author is looking to get across. This sense of balance that the adepts and those that can use magic offer the world. This idea that the manipulation of these strands, the use of any magic at all, is tied to the stability of the universe as a whole. They must treat it with care. They must be cautious with how they affect the world they live in with this magic. But they cannot just let the adept race die off, because that would also unbalance things. The characters throughout the whole story consistently refer to a constellation called Cephrael's hand, shown now in the sky right at the beginning as an ill omen often unseen, but with great superstition attached to it. Its mention in the very first chapter seems to set things off onto a path to which this book is only the beginning of something much greater, which is saying a lot, as this book is already quite long on its own. I know there's currently 4 of these released. I'm not sure if there'll be more, but to see this as only the beginning means if you were to pick this up, you're in for a grand experience. There are a ton of plot threads and a lot of characters to keep straight, but it all becomes manageable after not too long, because the author's got a good eye for plotting and never seems to get lost in what she's created. None of it's messy, none of it's loose or convoluted. There's a lot of purpose in how it's put together, and it's all tightly woven. It's what you'd expect and hope for from such a sizable epic fantasy like this. It's not perfect. Some of the characters get a little lost in their own personalities at times, but generally they're well written. For example, the character Alinari, she's easily angered and at times just plain frustrating to read about. This is a character that gets a little too sucked into the role they're given by the author during some particular scenes to suit the author's needs at that time, rather than feeling as organic as you'd want them to. Then there are other times that problem does not occur with that same character, or like with the character Trell. He's so noble and honorable that sometimes it just feels forced or unlikely when it comes to certain decisions he makes. There are characters that literally offer him knowledge on who he is, and you as the reader by this point have some guesses and want to finally see him get some understanding, but he forgoes this completely at all times, at all opportunities. Forgoes that opportunity to maintain the storyline he's got going on, that he has to get his memory back on his own terms. So at times, the author's goals outweigh that of the natural progression in a character, but it's not so bad that it took away too much of my enjoyment. And in general, Melissa McPhail's writing is typically very well balanced. She's got great imagery in how she describes this world, but then does well in turning abstract ideas or themes into words, using that as well to inform our understanding of the world and its origins, or of its characters. She writes some good dialogue, some scenes very heavily conversational, sometimes twinged with humor that's actually funny, or emotion that works and enhances a scene. None of the dialogue really feels cookie cutter, as in each character's dialogue works to tell you more about that specific character. Much of it can't just be said by anybody, and really helps to both progress the story and the reader's connections to the people that we're reading about, or to connect the characters more to one another. I'd say the writing is both straightforward and descriptive, purposeful but imaginative, and eloquent but engaging. And overall, I'm quite happy with the decision to pick this up. And like I said, we'll be moving on to the second book, The Daggers of Adendegaith, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm going to be moving on to that book very soon. I highly suggest this one start out with the series with Cephrael's Hand to all those looking for an epic fantasy series outside of the normal realms of publishing, but easily still up to par with more traditionally published authors. It's a bit slow at first, but can offer great rewards to those who stick with it. I'm really glad to have gotten the chance right now, especially to talk about it at length, because tapping back into my thoughts on this first one will definitely help me going into the second. And I do hope more of you will check the series out and give it some attention. It'll be worth your time to try it if you like this sort of thing. The long and sprawling, well-crafted epic fantasy so many of us love to become immersed into. I can imagine a lot of people really liking it. That being said, definitely let me know if you've decided to pick it up, or if you've already come across it and read it yourself. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions. Thanks guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later with more.